Welcome to the What Should the CTV Ad Break Look Like in 2021? This webinar is hosted by Publica. I'm Sarah Whitcomb, the manager of publisher development at Publica, and I'm joined today by our three speakers. I'll have each of them give a brief introduction of who they are, their role, and where they work.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I'm Reed Barker. I'm head of advertising at Philo. Philo is a virtual MVPD focused on lifestyle and entertainment content, 63 channels, $20 a month. Check it out.
I'm Adam Noble. I run the OTT product at Index Exchange. For those of you not familiar with Index, we are an ad exchange specializing in premium inventory and transparency.
And I am Ben Antier. I'm one of the co-founders of Publica. I'm also the chief product officer. Publica is a connected TV advertising platform, and we help publishers monetize their CTV inventory.
Great. Well, I'll kick it off with you, Ben. So CTV is not traditional TV. So then why are we as an industry trying to replicate the ad break experience of linear television?
Sure, happy to start off with that. I think it's probably the most important question, since we're going to be talking about the ad break, is why do we even need to worry about the ad break? To me, I think that the most exciting thing about what we're going through in connected TV today is that it's a viewer-driven revolution. It's audiences that are shifting, and that's what's causing all of us to adjust the technology to basically follow the users. And what that means is, from an advertiser perspective, you're seeing your audiences, your consumers shift from one, the traditional cable TV system to a very different system. And that has a lot of implications on everything that you do. So as a technology provider, one of the things that we really try to focus on is to make that transition as easy as possible for advertisers by replicating the ad experience, right? So on one side, it's viewers that expect a certain TV experience, and on the other side, it's advertisers that are used to buying this inventory in a certain way and applying certain rules. And so we want to make sure that when the shift goes to connected TV, that they're also able to replicate those buying experiences.
That's great. Reed, for you as a publisher, how do you structure and monetize your ad breaks, and how do you think about this as you build out Philo?
Right, as a virtual MVPD, we're running the same broadcast feeds that Comcast or others run, from Viacom, Discovery, and other of our channels. So we're still in a lot of ways tied to that same broadcast clock that you have. So it's still a time clock. The breaks are being defined by the programmers on that side, et cetera. Where we're looking to do innovation really is in VOD and with new partners. So as we launch new FAST channels, new AVOD partners, finding ways to either reward the user for watching a longer break at the beginning so they don't have an ad-free experience, find ways to really just sort of play around with the model and see what works from an A/B testing perspective, because a lot of people have great ideas, but it's really interesting to see what happens to engagement with the users as they're watching it. And we've also put in things like, we know that people hate to have, the same ad in the same ad pod, or the same ad in back-to-back breaks. And so, we, as really a technology focused company, we have been able to write software so we can look at those duplicate ads, even if they come from multiple sources, because we source our inventory, our demand from multiple SSPs, so we could see the same creative come across the board, even though it's identified differently. So we've been trying to look very much at the customer experience, and we think programming and advertising are really all part of what the customer is seeing when they're watching television on Philo. So we're trying to do things to make it as seamless as possible and the best experience possible as we go.
Is it possible today to kind of deliver these advanced ad break experiences to users when it's a live stream?
It's harder on the live stream because you're working with the clock. So you really can't, there's things you can't do to take people out of the program, or, basically it's like opening another tab on a CTV device. But what we have done is, as we've implemented Chromecast and other sort of being able to have your application on your phone or your other device talk to your CTV device, we've created software that is really all server side centric. So that we're hoping that next year we can start exploring with things where you may start an ad. Let's say you're starting an ad for, a movie, and then you can complete that, where you can buy a ticket on your device by completing that ad, but still maintain that user experience you're seeing. And this sort of differentiates what you can do in CTV from what you could do in traditional cable with interactive ads, where you're limited to the functionality of a remote control that is really up, down, left, right, and some numbers. Being able to use the device that you're already using to watch TV, because, like it or not, it turns out that I end up having my phone next to me and I'm watching TV all the time anyway. So being able to, find ways to sort of embrace the new model of how people are watching TV and what technology can do to make the ad experience seamless and also more valuable to the customer.
Yeah, and I would add that one of the things that's been really great about working with Philo is realizing everything that you guys are doing to take advantage of what connected brings, right? And I think that's what is going to help ad dollars transition from traditional TV to connected TV, is all of these new experiences that we're going to be able to create, right? And I think there's going to be trial and errors. Not everything is necessarily going to work, but I think now that we have kind of the baseline of, okay, we can deliver an ad break with unique ads, we can have a session level insights and things like that, is how do we go beyond? And I think that's something we'll touch on later, but just wanted to say there's really a lot of interesting things that are happening in this space today, and a lot of technology being built.
Yeah, it seems we've got a lot of advancement, obviously. And I'm wondering from Adam, so are your DSP partners approaching streaming inventory today like TV or digital inventory? Do you think they're going to be able to take advantage of some of this technology advancements that we have in how we're running CTV now?
I think they'll be able to take advantage of them once they're ready, right? So DSPs are approaching this inventory like TV. Obviously, DSPs are leveraging this tech, which is digital tech. It's got digital features, digital bells and whistles, right? But the desire for that like buyer direct transaction is still real when you're talking about TV buyers, and OTT is an extension of that experience, right? But there's also an additional the elephant in the room, which is there's no relevant signaling in the open marketplace for OTT, right? So OTT buys tend to emulate TV for a few different reasons. One is that TV buyers are used to the one-to-one deals, used to the pre-negotiated pricing, priority, and all that. But the other problem is how do you find it in an open marketplace, right? That's why deals have become so paramount in terms of packaging OTT inventory. There isn't like an OTT object out there that's screaming to buyers, hey, this is really high quality long form inventory. The other thing to comment on why DSPs are thinking of this or buyers are looking at this like TV inventory is that buyers are also focused on TV metrics, right? Like reach, frequency, competitive separation, creative control, like all of those things are different when you think about how your typical auction place and exchange are architected, right? Because at the root of all of this is just the simple fact that OTT is not like a lot of other digital inventory, right? Like if you think of formats like display, there's a ton of different sources. Inventory can be created somewhat trivially, right? Like a big news event can trigger enormous inventory surges, create a new article, create a new blog, right? Like all of those things trigger inventory surges. Also add like new slots to a page, right? I can find new placements on a site. Like OTT is different than that, right? It's only got a few properties that are really of merit and really have that super high production quality. It's TV, right? The ad format's consistent. It's limited to the user experience. There's only so many ways that you can slice and dice a commercial break for inventory. So, when buyers are approaching us, when automated technology is trying to make sense of this, there's a lot of work to be done because the buyers are typically still thinking of this inventory as an extension of their normal linear TV inventory.
So considering that, that's kind of the buyer mindset, what is Index doing to evaluate like the real-time ad break opportunities and kind of help push the buyers forward in this new format?
Yeah, it's a challenge, right? So today we're focused on the ad slot, right? We're almost treating OTT like other digital ad opportunities. Where we get the ad opportunity, we're holding the auction, we send it back to the ad server where all the critical decisions are being made. It works, but it's imperfect, right? This is where like the diminishing returns of the open marketplace can occur because if we say we don't know that we get an opportunity to bid on 5 creatives, but we don't know that they're part of a pod, right? Like we may send back the same creative 5 times. And then you end up with the ad server rejecting 4 of the 5 ads, moving down to the next priority. You might end up either lowering your return or even just serving a house ad to fill. So like we have to get better on pods, for example. Like a good near-term state is where pods are accounted for within the auction and buyers are able to value an ad slot like they do on TV. Like the first spot out of a break is probably more valuable than the 4th or 5th, right? So being able to put that logic into the auction place is going to be a super critical variable that helps get us, over the top when it comes to this type of inventory.
And Adam, I have a follow-up question for you on that. I feel like from a supply side perspective, we have a very clear understanding of how the ad breaks are structured and what the duration of the break is. Philo has it, for example, not only gives you information on this is a 4-slot break, but also how many breaks are going to take place in this VOD asset, or so a ton of data on the sell side. I feel like the demand side might not be leveraging that today. Do you feel like it's a limitation in terms of just is it a technical limitation, or is it more like a global understanding? Like what do you think is causing that?
Well, I think there's a combination. I think, for example, just having the duration passed for every creative isn't always a thing that happens, right? So
yeah,
we need to make sure that we're reading the creative that comes in and we have these various puzzle pieces to put together, which would be, a technical limitation. I think on the other side of it, you also have a really fragmented marketplace when you consider how the ads are actually being transacted on, right? That model of, hey, here's a pod, put the puzzle pieces together, maximize the return for me and give it back to me, only works if it's coming back to an ad server that doesn't say, well, hold on, I got this priority here, I have this direct deal here, I have this buy here. And then all of that logic you just did is somehow disrupted, right? So there's a combination, I think, between maturing the actual environment itself, making sure the signaling works the way it's intended to work, making sure that we're doing our job on our end to maximize the value of each slot, but then also just straight up adoption of the open marketplace for what it actually is intended to be, right? Where the traditional waterfall dynamic doesn't disrupt what we're trying to do in terms of like optimizing the return for each pub.
So Adam, do you think there's something that CTV buyers or publishers could be doing now to attract more open RTB demand? Or are we sort of just playing catch up? What is your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely stuff that CTV buyers can do to attract demand, right? But I think the reality is like buyers aren't as focused on open RTB right now because sellers aren't really enabling the full potential of it. So like it's just kind of a fact of where we are, right? So, and that might be okay. Like right now, buyers and sellers seem kind of okay with this, right? This is the traditional TV dynamic of upfront buys, direct sales, and plus that lack of technical definitions on the OTT front in the open marketplace. That doesn't create like a lot of security for some of these guys and saying like, yeah, let me adopt this new means of monetization. Open RTB, I think, can prove real value if it does 2 things well, right? A, it's got to show that putting inventory into this marketplace and creating competition for it, it puts upward pricing pressure on inventory, not downward. I think there's still like some PTSD from the display ecosystem and commoditization. And then the other thing is really just quality controls. TV publishers want the controls that they have when they're putting a normal linear buy together or linear flight together. Having those capabilities more adapted to the open marketplace will help. But there are some tactical elements that I think everyone can take advantage of. Like the first thing, make sure your SSAI infrastructure can actually handle this, right? A large volume of SSP responses can screw with like legacy or outdated serving infrastructures. And I'm sure Reed can talk about some of this because Philo's done a really good job, I think, of creating a best in class and kind of really updated method of serving ads. But the other thing too is construct ad breaks in a way that it gives your buyers confidence and control. Are we giving inventory transparency? Are there pod level insights? How are we controlling frequency and duplication control? Agreeing to signaling standards, I think, is also super critical. I think we need to get to a place as an industry where we're signaling the content object, where we're talking about at least enough about the inventory to define things like production quality, length of content, and all that, because that will matter in a big way to the open marketplace's ability to understand what this inventory is. And then ultimately it's trust, right? It's, adopt some unified auctions, some parallel bidding technology, start weaning off 100% reliance on deals and direct sales, and see what the market value can do for your inventory, and kind of adding that upward pressure.
That's great. And you touched on this briefly, but I am kind of curious, how are buyers navigating brand safety concerns? Because that's one thing you mentioned.
So if I'm being honest, it's like, with their fingers crossed, their eyes closed, and, kind of wandering in the wilderness to some degree. But unfortunately, that's kind of just where we're at today with how OTT kind of works. And I say that in jest, right? But like, if you think about the biggest buyers, the big guys are managing this with direct buys. Like, they're trying to get richer insights into delivery. The challenge of that is, like, a single big direct buy isn't going to give you the scale to do like the cooler stuff and like really scale an audience out. So what happens is most end up transacting, via deals, right? So you have this kind of deals ecosystem that works across the entire spectrum of inventory. You ask questions, is everything IMDb rated? Can we have an allow or a block list, right? Like, these are the basic tactics. The problem is the fact that direct buys and even upfronts, like all of this stuff, they offer some safeguards, but there's always going to be portions of OTT inventory that have limited visibility. And, that being the case, that's naturally going to result in some brand safety concerns. Like the Roku channel, for example. Roku's done an incredible job. Their market share is huge, but they also have a really long tail of UGC apps within their ecosystem, right? Pluto TV has Oscar-winning movies and primetime TV, but they also have like fringe political talk shows. Tubi's all IMDb rated, but like, what about graphic content? What about explicit language, right? Like, unlike linear TV, the buyer can't just like say in their IO, I don't want MTV. I don't want, the crime channel, or God forbid, I don't want the political show, right? That all factors in, I think, to OTT right now, and how marketers are going to view brand safety, how they're going to, there's no perfect solution. Part of this problem, though, to the larger question, right, is this isn't really like a super technical problem necessarily. Like, this is to some degree a business problem. We have to continue to remember, like, this is TV. This is an evolution in TV, just like over the air was an evolution into cable, into digital set-top boxes. And now we're at a place where bandwidth and technology is allowed for internet streaming, right? The content distribution agreements and all those restrictions around that legacy TV framework still apply, right? So as these new distribution channels are being opened up, there's rules. If you say on one virtual MVPD, hey, you can't, for these main broadcasters, you can't tell me, you can't tell the show, you can't show them exactly what it was. And then the platform says, well, that's going to be a blanket rule then, because we can't apply that just to you and not to other inventory. You end up with some black boxes, right? So brand safety, I think, is challenging just in the sense that you're not always going to get the same perfect contextual fit that you can get on TV.
Yeah, and from the publisher side on brand safety, we see those same things, and we do a mixture of, we don't do any direct. It's all resellers and programmatic. So it's OpenRTV plus PMP deals, and we sort of do the priority between those two different marketplaces. But on brand safety, we've tried to listen to what people are telling us, upstream. And so we've started passing contextual signals into what we have. So not only do we pass things you can target on, like ratings and genre and runtime and VOD versus live and device, but that allows people to do brand safety, but we also allow people to, blacklist networks or whitelist networks. And especially around, we've seen a lot of that in the holidays. People are not only looking to be able to sort of branch that and do that delineation, not only for brand safety, but because they may know that they're buying broadcast already on a number of networks. It's like, I don't want to duplicate my reach because I know I'm buying network A. And if I'm buying network A nationally and then buying network A on Philo, I'm buying network A twice. So let's move that one to the blacklist and move on from there. And we've been able to, I think, from our perspective, because we're really sort of leaning into programmatic and resellers, we're really trying to build those partnerships and try to hear, what do people like you, Adam, are looking for upstream. And, part of it is a business problem, but part of it is Part of it is sort of a standards problem on, trying to identify those things across the board and who is going to set those standards. And part of it is a tech problem. I think just saying, these are the signals that you'd like in the system. Our business rules say that we can provide X, Y, and Z. Some maybe you can report on, some maybe you can target on, some maybe you can do both. But it's then a matter of once we have sort of together, from the buy and sell side, we start saying, okay, we need to start breaking some of these rules or figuring out how to, those paradigms that have stuck with cable TV, because we're a virtual MVPD, but the MVPD part of that is still legacy cable contracts that have, language about, that goes back to things that were relevant in 1994. So it's, from our perspective, it's trying to figure out, focus on what are those things that make sense. And as a partnership, I think, between the buy and the sell side to sort of say, what is the art of the possible? And then trying to figure out how to actually go there.
I love what you just said, and I think you hit the nail on the head on like an especially important topic, which is standards, right? And it's something that I would argue right now, like what we're witnessing is a meaningful moment in advertising history, because we're taking like the world's most reputable and kind of well-known format, right, TV, and it's digitizing. So like I think TV execs need to take a stronger action. For example, I think they need to have a seat at the table in some of these IAB meetings. I think there has to be a better understanding on both sides of the equation. We have the engineers and the excuse me, the ads.txt working groups and all these guys who are in the weeds of like the bid request and understand every nuance of that, but don't necessarily see the fact that like, yeah, no, all that makes sense, but this part you have to exclude because we have a licensing agreement over here that doesn't allow it, right? Like that's where things start to break. And I think that holistic understanding, I mean, the reality is we're taking the DNA of an ecosystem that was built for a format that is very, very different from what we're dealing with OTT. And then there's going to be growing pains as we work through that.
Let's switch topics just a little bit. Reed, I'm curious, for you, how important will SSAI solutions be to the evolution of ad-funded streaming in the future, and why?
Right. Well, we believe that SSAI is important because basically on the server side, where you're building the manifest to stream the video, if you're not using that same process to actually stream the ads, then you end up with buffering before an ad break or just a bad user experience. So in fact, we built our own SSAI at Philo and never once thought about decoupling what we're using to initiate a stream and to feed video to a user and building the manifest from what we're doing on the ad side. So those are primarily coupled on our side. And we also can use our SSAI for things like, if the ad server decides to give us duplicate ads, we have logic within our SSAI to know, oh, you don't want to show that same ad because we've audio fingerprinted every ad we've seen. We know that's a duplicate. Let's drop one and put either close the break or put something else in there. So lots of logic that sort of tie into the user experience we've been able to build into the SSAI. And quite frankly, we're working, our support team, hears things from the field, and we have a partnership with them to figure out, okay, what are customers seeing on the ad side that we need to make sure we're addressing? And that goes into our prioritization queue on the roadmap for what we're doing to add either new intelligence to the SSAI or new tools so we can be able to pull data to understand exactly what's happening.
And I think another important thing to mention on SSAI and relative to the brand safety factor that we just talked about is the SSAI server is the one firing the pixels, right? So it's incredibly important that these SSAI servers are included in the conversations we have about trust and authentication and up to standards, right, that are being developed, because ultimately if you can't trust the server that's letting you know when a transaction happened, you can't trust anything else, right? So I think it's also one of the most pivotal elements in this chain as you're trying to convince advertisers to spend more in this ecosystem.
Great. And Reed, looking to 2021, are you expecting to see more of some of the guaranteed programmatic bookings that Adam was talking about versus non-guaranteed deals? What are you aimed for programmatic? What are you expecting for next year?
Yeah, I think, we've been, Philo just celebrated our 3rd anniversary as a consumer product just this past weekend. And I think one of the things, as we've been accelerating our growth, and we, saw 300% growth year over year from 2019 to 2020, one of the things is we focused, I think last year on really diversification of our demand stack. This year we focused on optimization of that stack. Now we're really focusing on ways to, from our perspective, drive higher CPMs, ways to create better and deeper partnerships all the way up the chain, whether it's the SSP, DSP, or the agencies. And the tools we had to do that are not only PMP deals or being able to be very flexible and setting those up in whatever pipe someone wants to come into Philo, whether they want to come in through, Index, or they want to come in through, SpotX, or whoever they want to come through. Be able to work and be able to have that flexibility to set those up the way they want to see them. And then also being able to, do more programmatic guaranteed, have the tools to make sure that we are able to deliver programmatic guaranteed, because you can sign the deal, but if you can't deliver on both sides, then it, what are you really guaranteeing? It's so I guess my sense is that we expect to see more programmatic guaranteed. We expect to see, a wider range of PMPs, but we also expect to, be very flexible in how we're able to prioritize and move things up and down, the decision tree.
And Ben, do you want to discuss sort of how, maybe the technology on Publica side really can help streaming publishers grow their revenue with PMPs, or, kind of how they can set themselves up for success for the rest of the year and next year?
Absolutely. I mean, we obviously believe very much in the future of programmatic TV, right? We think that a lot of the direct buying that is happening today is going to move to a programmatic way of being transacted, even if it still means, like Reed says, that there is an agreement before the deal is set up on floor prices, on volumes, on targeting and things like that. So everything that we do at Publica is about making that easier, right? And making it easy for the publisher to set things up, and then also to Adam's point earlier, for either the SSP or the DSP to identify these that fit into the PMP schemes that are being set up. So there's something we always obsess over is, how do we convert a business strategy, right? Something that comes from either the sell side or the buy side. I want to buy this audience, or I want to sell this content, to an AI model, right? Where in real time, when a user turns on Philo and goes to the show, they get the ad that yields the most revenue for the publisher and delivers the best user experience. So yeah, everything we do is around that, and we're certainly going to continue to build many PMP features in the future, because we think that's going to be the bulk of the inventory is going to be sold that way.
Great. Adam, a question for you would be, a hot topic in the programmatic world is SPO. Do you think that we've reached the maturity point of CTV yet, where buyers are already thinking about SPO strategies?
I frankly don't think we've reached a maturity point related to OTT in this marketplace on any topic. But I would say, the answer to that I think is generally speaking a no, but we're starting to see more publishers begin to think that way as supply grows beyond the reach of their direct sales teams, right? And that's always going to be the tipping point, I think, for us in this space is, as more adoption occurs, as inventory begins to explode, as it continues to explode, that tipping point is going to be the forcing function into more of a thoughtful SPO strategy, right? The virtual MVPDs, the fast apps, like they're the ones kind of leading the charge on that front today, right? Because they're the ones with a ton of inventory. They're looking for incremental demand via things like unified auctions. Most traditional pubs, however, are still relying on pretty traditional waterfall mechanics. There's a big segment of this space that's kind of stepped back 20 years, to guard inventory a little bit more. So like those fixed price arrangement, upfronts and guaranteed buys, like they do put kind of a blocker into like the ability to mature towards a proper optimization strategy, right? So like, you know, that works for now, right? Like when you're at 100% sell through, great. But, you know, I think as we open up the world to demand a little bit more, we're going to see that change. You know, in the end, you know, supply as it outpaces demand is going to force this. And I actually think podding, as we get better at it, might provide the forcing function on this front. And I say that because if the OpenRTB tech can get better, right? And if like some of the stuff like Ben, you and I've talked about and you're working on, like if we can get to that place where we're dissecting the ad break, we're maximizing the value of each spot, we're sending it back, you know, according to the rules that are typically relegated to like the publisher ad server, you know, that opens the opportunity, I think, to be a little bit more thoughtful on like the SPO side of things. As publishers adopt the, you know, more parallel bidding, header bidding, you know, whatever the right word is for OTT, when we're talking about unified auctions and kind of real-time bidding, you know, that's going to increase the need for SSPs. It's going to increase the need for transparency, accountability. You know, we always say internally here at Index that like you should expect a receipt for every transaction, right? And that's where we're going to step into that ecosystem and provide a helping hand. But I think the industry and the space has to mature into the open market a little bit more. But right now, we're really happy to be working with, you know, some of that middle tier large inventory from those virtual players who are a bit more thoughtful about an SPO strategy.
Great. I'm curious. Well, you know, Reed can chime in on this also, but the CTV ecosystem, are we better placed to navigate kind of the identity headwinds than display is? And if so, why?
Yeah, from my perspective, we've been identity. This is for the third time I've talked about it today in meetings. It's really trying to understand there are a lot of people out there trying to solve for identity. One of the things that, you know, we use device ID and IP address for targeting, but then, you know, that everybody has their own device graph on how they're doing that. So how identity is actually going to be out there. We're spending a lot of time looking at all the different options, whether it's, you know, the Trade Desk or LiveRamp or VideoRamp or all these people that are doing different things, and trying to understand how we can participate in as many as possible, you know, that makes sense for us. But with knowing that we can't predict the winner, you know, who's going to be the true identity in 3 years. And it's really trying to make sure that we understand what our values are in terms of privacy for our customers and how we're protecting that, you know, as we participate in ad targeting and in identity. And also, you know, who the best stewards are going to be on the other side and who's going to bring the most value. It's right now we're sort of keeping, you know, our dance card open and trying to talk to everybody and do some experimentations with different people. But I think one of the things that we're trying to figure out for next year is, you know, do we go, you know, all in on a few people when we haven't even seen the river yet?
And I'll add to that a little bit. You know, I think you know, identity is always a hot topic, right? To play devil's advocate with CTV a little bit, you know, I think we have to. I can tell you, maybe this is just my roots in the broadcast side of business, right? But like, I keep reminding myself that the value of CTV inventory is high without like really perfect identifiers for every user. Like TV has proven that for 70 plus years, right? So the scarcity of really high quality TV content alone does protect against some of the challenges that other formats like display and online video will bump up against and are bumping up against, right? Like if you think about it, like display, social, online video, like they shifted away from contextual value and towards identity value because there was so much of it, right? So like who could get really good at identity was a clean marker that would separate inventory from other inventory. With OTT, that's a factor, no doubt about it. But it is a little bit different because there's inventory scarcity. There's, you know, really high quality broadcast television is hard to produce. It costs a bunch of money, right? It's a little bit of a different type of inventory. I think there's also the element that like OTT targeting happens at the household level right now, right? For the most part, you're talking about a big screen TV on the wall. Obviously, there's other screens involved, but like to focus on CTV, you know, there's a little bit more room to wiggle around that one-to-one device-to-human paradigm that threatens a lot of other formats. So, you know, I think the combination of like the recognized value of a big screen TV ad scarce supply and like that one-to-many delivery does provide, if not a guard against the identity challenges that face everything, but like at least an ability to, increase the length of the runway a little bit as we get there.
Yeah, Ben, and speaking of what we were saying about keeping the dance card open, how are you thinking from a technology perspective to kind of prepare or, also keep the options open from a technology point of view?
So from my perspective, I think identity is incredibly important in this space. And something that I've been saying a lot is I think people are excited about, the ad dollars shifting from traditional TV to connected TV, and that $70 billion market transitioning. But really, I think if we get the identity piece right, the opportunity is much larger, because if you give an advertiser the opportunity to target a person, right, to target people the same way on a user-generated newsfeed or on the biggest screen of the house, on in front of the person's favorite content, I think for the advertiser, it's a no-brainer, right? If you give the same audience targeting capabilities in premium TV versus user-generated newsfeed, then it's always going to go to the TV, right? And that market is much larger. So I think it's incredibly important that we get it right. And there's been a lot of conversation about the death of the cookie and IDFA going away, and a lot of companies in ad tech have kind of taken the easy way out of saying, well, we'll just do contextual and that's okay. And I don't think that's a satisfactory answer. It's about making sure that we have technology that enables people-based targeting at a very precise level while maintaining excellent, just identity safeguards for individuals, right? So we need to make sure that we're compliant with the law, but we also have to be going much further in terms of privacy and making sure that people feel safe about the way their data is being used. So I think it's about not only building the tools to target, so based on the IDs that Reed talked about, the TV IDs, the IP, and so on, but also about being extremely rigorous around privacy, so that we can continue to use this data to deliver safe advertising in a very targeted way.
Yeah, and I just want to build on one thing that Adam talked about household is, that's one of the things that we definitely hear from people is, the people who traditionally bought digital are looking for individual impression. People who came from TV are looking for a GRP. One understands what a household is. One doesn't understand why our grandma and the grandkid are both watching the same television show in their same room, and you can't target both of them. So it's, it is a lot of, I think, education, learning, and trying to figure out how to, it's not a simple puzzle because everyone has sort of their own perspective, whether they're traditional TV or digital, on what value is and how you measure. So I think it becomes a continual conversation on that.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's always an interesting moment when you're in that OTT sales pitch and it's like, well, do you have a calculation to convert this, or hey, we built our own, right? And I like that the broadcast side, to give them some credit too. Like there are companies like my former employer Hearst who are transitioning to impression-based TV sales, right? So I think as we agree on like the economic medium, like that's a starting point. But to Ben's point too, like this notion of a connected household for marketers is a big deal, right? Like getting beyond, like we understand that the TV is a household-based device, but it's an internet connected device, right? So like where traditional linear tended to operate in that vacuum separate from digital, CTV does enable that connectivity, right? So if you have that IP-based retargeting opportunity, or you have that device graph, there is the opportunity for marketers to extend campaigns into other digital formats, right? So I think that'll only increase the value of certain troughs of inventory relevant to this new OTT ecosystem.
We only have a couple minutes left, so I wanted to kind of wrap it up with a question to each of you, which is just if you could make one improvement overnight magically to the CTV advertising ecosystem, what would it be? I'll start with you, Reed.
Great. So I think from our perspective, it's really about more data and transparency on what's happening, between on each hop from, the ad pod being identified to the ad call happening to the bid to having it all come back and understanding. One of the things that I think we've been focused on is trying to figure out how do we understand what's happening at each stage of the hop and where, is there a problem somewhere, or did I get an ad from a place I didn't want to get an ad for, but it was obfuscated somehow? Those are like, if you could ask anything on transparency on just the end-to-end data pipeline, that would just make things amazing.
I guess I'll go next. So first off, like, great answer, Reed. I'm with you. And I think like the app-ads.txt guidance coming from the IAB is like addressing some of this. That'll be out in, I think, public forum in the next, week or two. And I'm interested in that topic as well. But if I could kind of wave a magic wand, I mean, transparency is still the theme, right? Like if we could introduce on top of that transparent supply chain, like just an OTT object, right? In a bid response or a bid request, like that would be beautiful. We need improvements that clearly delineate this inventory from other inventory. Like that's like the headline in my world from day to day, like production quality, content length, distributor relationship, like all of those things factor into just the trust that the open marketplace needs to earn before TV publishers really feel confident in it and buyers really feel comfortable that they're getting an actual impression of value back. So I think like if we did have something like an OTT object, if you combine that with like universal conveyance of the content object and updated ads.txt, now my wish list is getting like really big.
Your
now.
wish list is growing.
I think those, if you could somehow take those elements and put them together, we'd have a cleaner open marketplace, and it would really determine or deliver a lot of value for both sides.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with what was just said, and it's something that we've focused on early on at Publica, and we continue to work on every single day. Right, is giving those tools to publishers to be able to surface their inventory in a very transparent way. So absolutely. To me, I think one of the main issues that the industry hasn't quite solved yet is prefetching. So the amount of times you're loading ad breaks ahead of time, and if the user switches channel, then you've kind of sent requests to all your buyers, and then that doesn't convert. And I think that unfortunately decreases the trust factor and the credibility of the inventory. It kind of overinflates numbers in some cases. So I think that's one of the things we need to work on. And maybe it all comes back to transparency, right? It's just about explaining, hey, this is a prefetched ad break that might run in 20 minutes and things like that. So I think from a technical standpoint, that's one of the things that we need to address as an industry. And really, I think that the rest is about continuing to improve the household graphs and the identity game, because I feel like we're just getting started there in terms of what's possible.
Thanks. I definitely feel like this is all just getting started. So thank you all for talking to me today and kind of explaining your thoughts on the industry. We will be closing this out. We're out of time, but this will be posted on YouTube, and keep an eye out also on the Publica social media channels. We'll post it there as well. But thank you all so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, Adam. Reed, great talking to you guys.
Likewise.
Bye.